In the last video we considered the dark and infinite sea that surrounds us. We explored the limited nature of our physical human senses, and how these limits, imposed or otherwise, are responsible for obscuring the true forces that shape our destiny. Our highly limited natures blind us to the many hidden worlds that are all around us, a whisper away, and, thankfully perhaps, our limited sensual awareness obscures the mind-shattering infinity that surrounds us as well. If we can, but for a second, believe that there are indeed many things happening all around us right now that we cannot perceive, might we also perhaps consider for at least a little while that human thoughts, which are energetic units, vibrating at a frequency that cannot be detected by our human physical senses, could affect our lives, even though they don't seem to have any substance from our physical senses' point of view. Could long exposure to certain thoughts change things, just like long exposure to X-rays, which we cannot perceive either, can change things? If they can, how could these seemingly insubstantial consequences of human consciousness change our reality? Perhaps such changes, by what we think of as seemingly ethereal thoughts, happens in such a gradual and complex way that we are often not aware of such changes. So that even when we accidentally become aware of it, we tend to just chalk it up to luck or coincidence. But what if coincidence and chance are not the random things that we think they are? What if they are part of a complex system, a dynamical system, that we have yet to understand? Consider this. Many people have heard of synchronicity, but few understand what it actually means, and how it relates to the power of thought and its ability to change our lives. Synchronicity could be said to basically be the principle by which we know the phenomenon of time. If different actions align within one frame of reference, they are said to be synchronous. One way to think of this is to contemplate the idea that all the gears in a clock must align perfectly in order for us to be able to measure the passage of time. Synchronicity, though, is much more than this if it is seen from a metaphysical level. Carl Jung, for example, was a great explorer of the power of synchronicity, and described it as temporally coincident occurrences of causal events. He came closest to explaining the relevance of synchronous events as they relate to the human psyche, and how it is that human consciousness might affect time, and therefore space. Quantum physics tells us that synchronicity is going to occur in any first-class universe. This means that in any system of created things, you are naturally going to have events that are going to occur in a unique correspondence to one another. For example, you might look at your watch at exactly 12 noon on the 12th month of the 12th day, when you happen to be 12 years old. But when the coincidences are far beyond the probable, as might be determined by the mathematical laws of probability, then there is an outside force working or affecting events. When this rare type of synchronicity happens, it is called meaningful coincidence. These outside forces mentioned can be any number of different things. Jung, for example, thought the collective human unconscious was the paramount force affecting and creating meaningful coincidences, or synchronous events. To a far lesser degree, metaphysicians believe that individual human consciousness can affect time and create coincidences in our personal lives. If you believe in the power of human thought and are practicing exercises that are meant to attract wealth, health, or love, then you have to learn to become very aware of the meaningful coincidences that make up your life. Synchronicity in this case is the way that thoughts, those ethereal things that we feel have no substance, can bring probable events into existence. For example, let us say that a person is using the power of thoughts to get a new car. He or she performs whatever exercises designed to focus thought in order to bring about a probable future where he or she owns a great car. In simple terms, therefore, this person now has two probable future timelines, one in which he or she doesn't own a car, and one in which he or she does own one. In order to jump from one timeline to the other, this person needs a bridge. This bridge will take the form of a synchronous event. These synchronous events don't have to be a grand thing. Most often these meaningful coincidences will be small things that are only relevant to that person. He or she might be walking down the street when all of a sudden a sparrow flies out of nowhere. They happen to love sparrows and consider them lucky. The sparrow barely misses the person and then flies off and lands on the roof of a car dealership. This person decides to explore this meaningful coincidence, or omen if you prefer, and finds that the owner of the dealership happens to be an old friend, and as a result, he or she is able to get an incredibly affordable vehicle that has everything that they wanted. Whether you want to call it synchronicity, meaningful coincidences, omens, or just good old-fashioned luck, these events are very important because of the very fact that they are life-altering. In a larger scale, these omens are usually brought about in conjunction with giant memes, an idea or belief that is spread throughout an entire culture. These synchronous events can become so powerful that they eventually create wholly blown mythical ideas and systems that bring about even greater change. These changes will involve a change in perspective as people's opinions change, but they will also trigger large-scale synchronous events that are judged to be lucky or otherwise by the world at large. These meaningful events might even take on the form of seemingly paranormal happenings, like mass sightings of strange phenomena. In this way, ethereal thoughts can change things on an individual level and on a universal one. In future videos we will explore the power of thoughts and how to implement their power to change our lives for the better. If you are interested in learning more about the power of thoughts, how they grow, develop, form, and affect our lives, then I would personally recommend any of the 3 books in the Creator Servitor series. I will leave the links to them in the video description below. For now, try to remember that there are really no such things as coincidences. Coincidence is just a word that we like to use when we must admit to ourselves that we are not currently capable of understanding the consequences of a highly complex system. Pay attention to the omens in your life, because they are always the waves and tides created by forces that, even though hidden, nevertheless shape our lives.